Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another podcast episode of Insights by OutsightX, the one-stop shop podcast for everything to know about the first IPM batch at DoMS NALSAR. Now, today we have yet another premier faculty episode today with Professor Praveen with us. To give you a bit brief about him, he's a chartered accountant and has over 13 years of experience in the field of financial modeling as well as in investment banking. Now, his areas of interest are accounting for managers and finance management as well. He's been teaching the MBA batch and has been one of the founding members of the Entrepreneurship Cell as well here. We want to welcome to the podcast, sir.
Thank you.
So to ask you a little bit, in depth about your experience with DOMS and the whole procedure of setting up the E-cell and also having the placement and also the IPM interviews coming in as well. We want to get your experience with everything right now. So to start off with our, the most fundamental questions that we had, that what has been the best answer up till now that you've heard for why DOMS in your interviews?
Well, so that's an interesting question. I mean, to start off, let me just congratulate you for being such a wonderful host. It's been a while that somebody has given heaped praise on me. A very interesting answer as to why DOMS is it has the best lakeside view. I'm not really sure. Probably we are way too close and we're really not appreciating the nature enough. But this student from Delhi thought that we had the best lakeside view, and it's probably going to be a fun 5 years. So beside that, I thought that was interesting.
Right, sir. I mean, the whole portion of, even the interviews for us as the first, batch was very nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Now, I remember during my experiences when I was just scrolling through, the DOMS Facebook pages, the Instagram pages, I came across one of your posts where just after your interviews had been done with you being the interview panel, you had walked out right in front of this building and you had, talked about how couple of interviews for you had been extremely invigorating and extremely unique.
Yes.
And I remember that to be my first experience, with you as well. Although you were not in my panel that I ended up interviewing for, that really kind of ignited my interest for DOMS itself.
Right. I mean, to actually even reflect on the entire interview process, so you're not interviewing somebody who is experienced, so you don't have the typical questions that you reach out for an MBA.
Right.
At the same time, you're not interviewing for a regular run-of-the-mill program. You need somebody who is smart and who is definitely capable to be a part of the program. And how do you judge that? Definitely not on scores. So one surprising, I wouldn't say surprising obviously, because the post-COVID results have been that. The average scores that we have looked at, or I have looked at, in my interview panel was about 95%, and it was going all the way up to 98, 99, and 100, and 10, 10, 12. So at one level, I was particularly pleased that nobody's below 95. I was also wondering who is evaluating them. So it was interesting. But yeah, the pedigree is very difficult to judge because as an institution or as an interviewer, obviously it is your responsibility to get the best person in, and probably that draws to a reference that it is definitely nerve-wracking.
Right.
You would be exhausted thinking did we evaluate properly? So the next 5 years of this program is dependent on our evaluation.
Right.
Yeah.
Sir. I think I remember, Pinaki sir talking to us about the whole process. It was completely online though, the initiation ceremony. It was, I think, in the boardroom in itself, which is quite recent to the one we're shooting in right now. But I also distinctly remember when we came offline, you had come to the class once to, talk about the Entrepreneurship Cell and, getting us to, know about it more and you'll get us interested in it.
Right.
I couldn't help but think the fact that we are in the final trimester of our first year, that you would have also been, been thinking about your first impressions of the batch.
Right.
So could you shed some more light on the...
Well, I would really love to, but as such, I don't really have a very good interaction with the first years.
Right.
I take the electives, so it's more from the third year onwards. But the general first impression which I got from the students and from the faculty feedback that we get to hear is very, very good. It's almost like the intent is palpable. So I'm quoting a professor on this. The intent that the students are displaying in class is palpable, So it's making us work extra hard, which I think was a compliment to the batch. So the first years, at least in the first 2 to 3 terms, have been spectacular. It's just that we want to ensure that the N2 doesn't train off as the time progresses. It's a fairly long program. So yes, student feedback was spectacular, and partly based on that, we are scaling up the ECEL activities, the entrepreneurship cell. So in your introduction, you talked about we doing a lot of things in finance. So of course, I'm a finance faculty. But what I'm really interested in is, can we really have a second track in your mind? Instead of just playing onto the academics or the record that takes you to grades, can we have a second track in your mind which allows you to think beyond the class, beyond the curriculum? And entrepreneurship, I feel, is a very good way of doing that, particularly because it not only works towards synchronizing your subjects, it not only talks about bringing functional areas together, it also talks about creating value, right? At the end of the day, everything that we do should translate into value, and where and how. Identifying that probably is crucial, because most stats say that 99% people are very comfortable doing a job, working for salary at the end of the month, right? Now, this is a statistics, and statistics typically don't lie. That means we are used to a mindset where we are either scared or not sure, right? So this mindset, I think, is problematic, because for a generation which is practically on crossroads, everything that we know as it is going to change in the next 5 years. And this is not a generation which should work on traditional run-of-the-mill model. So entrepreneurship, there are definitions, there are hundreds of definitions, obviously, but the one that I see makes a lot of sense is, can we talk about creating a value through taking an acceptable risk? Right? Of course, the other extreme is where we talk about startups, where the risks are probably a little insane, risk reward is a little high, but not everybody is built or cut out for that sort of a risk appetite. So a via media where you need not work so as in an employee mindset, where you can probably work towards creating value, and not just at a scale which is probably global or pan-Indian, right? So ECEL for us, or DoMS, is about social entrepreneurship. The whole idea of social entrepreneurship is definitely not social service, and neither is it about NGO. So the way we want to position or portray ECEL activity is, can we look at problems a little differently? Can we look at solutions which are not for today, maybe for tomorrow as well, and maybe for sustainable future? So a whole concept of your innovation, sustainability should become a central theme rather than an add-on in a report, right? So entrepreneurship for profit is a very passe, it's an 80s model. Entrepreneurship for economic value is probably the 2000 model, where if you can figure out a way to generate delta, the value add, you're very comfortable. And that's where businesses were thriving, so for about 20, 25 years. But now we are talking about responsible investing, committing to the societal values a bit more, bringing them onto the center stage. So all this requires a slight change in approach. Whether you're talking from a risk reward perspective, in fact, you're adjusting the entire perspective of business now. To be able to do that, we should start understanding the nuances a bit more, and that, I think, should be ingrained. It should be a part of how we are approaching a curriculum as well. So we want to see if entrepreneurship can be mainstream, and can ECEL play that role at DoMS, is a positioning that we have at DoMS. Industry Relations and Interactions Committee, it's not envisioned as an extension of a placements committee. So there is a full-fledged trainings and placements committee at DoMS, which takes care of your internships and placements, of course. But IRIC is meant to add a layer where students can interact with industry members without the pressure of trying to impress them for internships or placements. So the whole idea is, can you create an environment where, I'll give you an example. Let's say there's a founder, there's a promoter who is doing exceptionally well at entrepreneurship. In the sense, he lets his employees start his own companies. We know somebody, in fact, one of our guests is going to do that. So there are 5 employees, 5 startups incubated in his company in the last 2 years. So in this talk, there is nothing that talks about or that has a relevance towards training and placements directly, but can you get that insight into how a promoter is thinking here? Right? And the other important outcome of a IRIC is, can you showcase your work to a industry body without the pressure, right? So how do you actually, one more example probably is, you would in your learning work on data visualization, data presentation, programming, programs. So at some point, if you were to build something, if you were to do a prototype, one way of presenting is to present en masse, portray it to a community at large, make a LinkedIn or a video on YouTube. The other is, if you have a very good pool a curated pool of industry personnel or industry leaders to whom you can engage with, why not take that forward? Why not make it a part of your career path? Right? So IRIC's role is predominantly to create that layer where you can interact with a curated set of industry leaders. The quid pro quo, of course, for them is they are also getting to engage with bright minds, and you never know where it might lead. It might actually lead to a placements discussion as well, but that is not the objective. So the whole focus is on building an environment of learning, to build a curated list of people where you can actually engage without the pressure. Right? And slightly outside the classroom environment, in a slightly more informal setup. The value add is phenomenal. If you just sit with founders, if you just sit with startup without the suits on, startup promoters, you will really enjoy talking to them, right? And that probably is one of the biggest takeaway that we are envisioning under IRIC. And till now, the activity that has happened, the response has been phenomenal.
Because I do remember there was a whole bustle in the boys' hostel as well, coming on, kid, we have a talk tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. everybody log in.
We are hoping to move it offline and see if we can do more firesides and an informal setup chats instead of a very formal model. That probably helps open up a few more avenues of thought process. So better luck to the team, and they'll probably do it sooner than later.
So as of the understanding up till now that we've had, like, DoMS as an organization, we can have IRIC as a blanket cover over it that can help out with the reaching out for other potential industry leaders, other scholars that can, not only market DoMS in a better position, but also get the students of DoMS to, interact with people that can add value to their lives.
Right. So as I said, predominantly IRIC is looked at as a cushion where you can learn without the pressure, and not necessarily in a classroom environment. So it's about creating those thought processes or safe places where you can think, you can perform, and there's no pressure of time. And then you're basically working to enrich yourself. So that's the only motto there. And in the process, if it benefits DoMS, that's ancillary. So that's for DoMS to be portrayed in the media. There are other places, but IRIC is a very student-centric model, very student-centric body. Right?
We wanted to, inquire a bit more in this whole area of social entrepreneurship, student engagement, industry readiness, because even in this case, we are now building slowly a community of learners that over the course of 5 years will have built the relevant skills, the soft skills, the technical skills as well, to essentially not only add value to organizations that they go, but also the organizations that they found themselves or they create themselves. So in line with your aims about the ECell, about IRIC, and about DoMS in general, what do you feel is the future of the IPM batch coming in the years?
Well, for starters, IPM's batch students' future is definitely bright, and I'm not saying that as a DoMS person. If you are in a group of superlative co-learners, if you are in a group of high-performing individuals, the community effect is bound to rub off.
Right.
And this is a community where not only the IPM students, but you have the students of law and the students of management as well, of course, the MBA. There is enough room to perform better.
Right.
Performance is definitely rewarded, and when you're talking about a reward, why be it a job opportunity? Why not it be a career as an entrepreneur or a startup founder, right? So all the avenues open up, provided that we continue on the path that we are right now set. So yes, I really don't have a doubt on where the IPM batch are going to lead to. One definite outcome is higher. That's where I'm standing right now, because we're still 3 years away from being really in the market. So yes, the program and the value add that is being created, I only see one way forward, and that's definitely higher.
Right, sir. Because even now, as we are, having more students coming in, a 60 strong batch coming in again as the first years, we now see, more people eager to learn, more people who will be, as good as us or even better in a lot of these cases. That will be, not only our competitors, but also co-learners in this case, where we can enrich our whole experience of being a DoMS together.
Yeah. So an interesting line of thought as to how do you see a person? So the peer learning experience. So where do you draw a line of competition, and where do you really draw a line of co-learning environment?
Right.
If you just take exams away as a central portion, your perspective towards the batch changes significantly. This is one of my learnings, that being competitive is a very, at least in the academics, has a very short-term benefit. So you won't necessarily build a network which will help you learn better. So competitive, absolutely yes. Competitive for the sake of exams, probably no. You would want to discard that part.
Right.
Co-learning environment, power groups, focus groups are absolutely in, and that's probably the best way to learn. Interest areas evolve much better that way. And yes, that's about it.
Right, so because even the portion of co-learning, we see primarily before the interns that come in.
Yeah.
Because
so that's counterintuitive actually.
right, sir. Because we have the library filling up up till 12 a.m. and there is everybody sitting in like this math formula I have no idea about. Why don't you teach it? So the whole 60 strong batch is in one floor that's completely occupied, and we are kind of trying to figure out how to go forward.
I do actually see when the discussion rooms are full. It does bring back memories of how we were preparing for our CA finals.
Right.
The idea is you can't be good at all the subjects. You're only good at 1 or 2 or 3 subjects. So the dependence, the codependence, it's almost parasitic in a sense. So if you are good at MAFA, then you're probably teaching about 30-40 people one day before the exam.
Right.
If somebody's good in accounting, you're sitting among those 40. So it works, and I'm pretty sure that's how the model is working and is sustainable as well. About the new batch, by the way, so since we've talked about the IPM 2, the second year, the first year students, I think this is going to be a batch that will only add to your strengths. So some of the students that we have interviewed are really good. They've demonstrated, even at a very short interview time of 10 to 12 minutes, they've demonstrated that they know what they're talking about. And I'm surprised at the levels of maturity that you people have. So in general, fairly fearless, and at a point, so you don't really mind going wrong, which is, for a lot of us, it was a very hard learning curve. So it's a grueling effort to at least be presenting. Right? Forget about actually making mistakes. I think one advantage that you people have is an absolute lack of fear, and the fact that everybody has an intent. Everybody is curious about what they should do, and remarkable clarity. So I am expecting great things again from the.
We have been, hearing stories up now about the interview sessions that have come in. A couple of people giving out, one of the most unique answers that they have heard.
Yeah.
So, in your experience, apart from the lake siding interview that came out, what has been one of your most unique experiences with the interviews that have come in?
Right. So, for starters, as I said, so I was fairly stunned by the amount of clarity that they have at a plus 2 level with regard to what they really want to do after 5 years. There were very specific answers that came in. One takeaway, I'm not really sure if it qualifies, but one takeaway is that information is a commodity, so there's no right answer.
Right.
People are not really worried about giving right answers, but the stress is a lot more in the thought process, which I find very interesting. So as to an approach to an answer is what is probably everybody's working towards. That I think is a takeaway for me.
Right. I do remember even in my interview, I think there was a question there were a lot of GK questions, there was a lot of math questions that also came in. And I don't think I answered even one in a numeric fashion. I always showed them my thought process, and the interviewers just ensured that can work.
No, so of course that's an area. As I said, information is a commodity, so nobody remembers anything anymore.
Right.
So as long as I can search for it, I don't need to remember it.
Right.
So most of the GK questions were unanswered, even by this batch, candidate admission. It's just that it doesn't matter. Even after giving 5 or 6 wrong answers simultaneously, continuously, the next question, if they know it, with the confidence and with the clarity that was required, it was presented. So that I thought was very surprising. I mean, ability to be modular, to be able to let go of what you did not do well, I think that was fantastic.
Right. So even because in my experience with the batch that we came in, there was a lot of stress that happens before you click, the join meeting that comes in. Because a lot of people that I remember ended up joining the meeting and staying in the room for 30-45 minutes.
Yes.
And when they finally were let in, they were having something. So there are a lot of mishaps that happened with our interviews as well.
Right. So that was a necessary evil, actually.
Right. So with this, we wrap yet another episode from our premier faculty episodes. We have talked about the grit and resilience it takes to conduct an interview, to be a part of a process that has fundamentally going to evaluate your thought processes, the way you speak, the confidence you portray, and the clarity that you show in your track of thoughts. We've also gone into the Entrepreneurship Cell, the IRIC committee, as well as the whole area of where we see DoMS in the next couple of years. I wanted to thank you for being here, sir. This would essentially be one of the most, intellectually, heavy episodes that we have done until now for the aspirants also that are going to be coming in.
Thank you.
For this, we will be wrapping up the episode. Thank you so much for watching. This is your host, Ayush Nigam, signing off.